our last speaker of the day, which is when you talk about women, of course, you talk about investment in women. So the investment is really important to bring to transform your dreams into a business or in a cause that is in your heart. You want to transform it into a reality. Of course, you need to raise a lot of funds from different sources. So I feel honored to introduce you with Ethar. Ethar is a founder and policy advisor. She is a global entrepreneurship committee member. She is very dynamic, upcoming uh, investment advisor. So uh, let's go and see what is her thoughts of the day.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ethar ElTinay, and I'm a policy advisor and the founder of the Think Tank Initiative, which is a MENA-based think tank. I'm also a member of the Global Entrepreneurship Committee at the Professional Women's Network, based in Paris, and the regional director at the International Youth Federation. I'd like to, first of all, thank Dr. Musa Sheikh and Berkeley Investment for inviting me to speak on this forum, the Pearls of Africa conference. My talk today is about women-led businesses in Africa, investment challenges, and way forward. So why is this important? Women in sub-Saharan Africa make up majority of entrepreneurs, and the region has the highest rate of entrepreneurship in the world, according to a World Bank report. Women also play a key role in the economies of sub-Saharan Africa, which is the only region where women make up the majority of entrepreneurs. But also a range of impediments render women's businesses less productive, and they have fewer employees than those owned by men. Now, wage job opportunities are limited in Africa, and this drives men and women alike to start businesses and become entrepreneurs. And also by the global report by the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, Africa seems to be the world's lowest share, or has the world's lowest share of entrepreneurs who started a business because they found opportunity. Most of them have started an opportunity business because of lack of other options. Women, overwhelmingly, they choose to enter sectors which have reduced opportunities for growth. They also have lower levels of available assets and capital to invest into their businesses, and they show less willingness to compete with men. They're also more likely to operate in the informal economy and less likely to adopt advanced business practices. Women also are obliged to make different decisions than men because they're constrained by gender-specific factors that hinder their growth and the growth of their businesses. These constraints are related to the context in which they operate, their endowments, the household-related factors, influence, strategic decisions that they make, which in turn lead to less productive outcomes for their businesses. So challenges for businesses also, not in the abnormal times of COVID now, MSMEs generally suffer from a lack of startup funding, even more during the COVID. Before the onset of COVID, World Bank estimated that SMEs had about a $331 billion financing gap in sub-Saharan Africa, which is likely to increase as foreign investors become very wary of increased risk. And then the donors will reassess their budgets and priorities post-COVID related economic challenges around the world. So one of the key funders, which is USA Development Fund, that awards grants up to around $250,000, had carried out a report, and it assessed businesses in 3 sectors: agriculture, off-grid energy, and youth-led enterprise. And in that report, all of the grantees interviewed highlighted the critical role that supportive funding has played in establishing their businesses, and how they follow on support and deference to grantee decision-making has enabled them to rapidly adapt to the challenges presented by COVID. And it enabled them as well to meet the immediate needs of their communities and meaningfully contribute to growth and stability with these fragile states. Also, challenges for businesses during COVID. The support for small businesses is vital, obviously, to achieving other development goals, particularly on a continent where many social goods and services, from education to health, are largely delivered through the private sector. While governments across the three regions of Sub-Saharan Africa, Central Africa, and West Africa have implemented robust policies to mitigate COVID-19, school closures, disruptions in supply chain, and increasing risk of violence and gender-based violence have placed an increased pressure on local businesses and communities to fill these gaps. Entrepreneurs started using innovative strategies, going online, pivoting their businesses to meet the needs of their communities. Also, community-led initiatives generate ongoing advantages for their communities because it's grassroots, from job to income creation, to improved health, security outcomes. Also, the essential contributions by small entrepreneurs to their local communities and national economies, and their critical role amid the pandemic, create areas for future collaboration between grant organizations and private sector partners in the region. And that's one area for our opportunity that private sector and donors should look at and consider when looking at funding and funding distribution. Some of the issues that are challenges that women face is the strategic decisions that they make within their endeavors or business endeavors. There are 4 areas that are identified by our World Bank report. It's mainly women choose the four areas is that, first of all, women differ from men in the sectors that they choose to work in. They second differ in the capital. There's differences in capital and labor within their organizations, and these differences make or break their organizations. There are differences in firm capabilities, and there are differences in women's willingness, obviously, to compete. The sectors that women choose sometimes, mostly, are in hospitality or retail in Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa. But then also, the research also shows that female-owned enterprises that are operating in male-dominated industries are just as large and just as profitable as their male counterparts. They're also larger than those in the female-dominated sector. So it seems that women, when they find a role model who's a male, and that's also by research, they found out that those women have had encounters or upbringing or a male figure that they were following through. And that in its essence is also problematic, because we need to start normalizing feminine leadership, and that we don't look at male leadership as the way that we need to work, and the only way that we need to work. But that's what research has been showing around the area, that on ground, women are able to, or have succeeded, or some women have succeeded in those businesses that are dominated by men, to become just as good or sometimes better. Also, the capital and labor issue, for instance. Female entrepreneurs in Africa have systematically lower levels of business capital, which is an issue, including equipment, inventory, and property, relative to their male counterparts. Typical male-owned firm has over 6 times the capital investment that women have, and female entrepreneurs have lower levels of labor that contribute to gender productivity gaps, which is an issue. Relative to male entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs employ fewer workers and use fewer labor hours in operating their business. But in most countries, women obtain returns on their business labor that are on par with those obtained by men. So with less, they're able to do just as good. So it shows that women actually put a lot of effort into and passion into what they do. And this is also talking about Africa right now and the current situation in Africa. Although it may seem that may be the case that male entrepreneurs use more capital and labor due to even access to funding and gender differences, the analysis in some reports shows that providing women with the same amount of investment resources is just as promising for women and men alike. So it's very important, and on this note, that we talk about access to funding and being able to distribute the funding equally between men and women, allowing women to have opportunities for funding, and access to funding is actually crucial for their growth. One experiment in Kenya found out by also one of the reports that women were less likely to compete with others. They prefer to not compete with other people, other businesses, which is may have been seen for a while to be an issue. Again, we go back to the whole feminine leadership and us promoting feminine leadership, and that if people prefer, women are generally more, we also talk about, it's a generalization, but let's say women are community builders, which means they tend to work for the community rather than individual selves. And that's something we should encourage. And it has shown that feminine leadership during the crisis of COVID has actually worked miracles for countries who were led by women. So if we talk about the current, the short-term solutions that we can adopt and are adopted currently within Africa and in other regions to help women get out of these situations and be able to access funding and scale up their organizations. First of all, supporting women with secure savings mechanism. Providing women with mechanisms to set aside some money for their businesses can actually help them insulate themselves from household demands, and they go to their businesses. Providing female market vendors also with access to savings has shown that it had led to a 45% increase in business investment. Another thing is providing large cash grants as part of a business plan competition, which has been the case through accelerators and incubators around the region and globally as well, can help address the capital constraints of growth-oriented firms, including ones owned by women. Another thing is facilitating export on SMEs. So a third thing is facilitating export for SMEs and MSMEs through programs like Empower Her by UPS. It links MSMEs to external markets and has been deployed in Kenya. In terms of longer-term solutions, we talk about removing legal constraints to gender equality, the regulatory implementation gaps in terms of allowing women to own their land, to be able to represent themselves, and so on. Strengthening land tenure rights for women, expanding women's linkages to new business networks is very important, creating those networks in the first place and allowing them to go global. Offering women-friendly training. And like we said, an emphasis on female leadership and feminine powers and feminine leadership. Providing in-kind grants to female-owned firms, continuing to do that, and with a focus of how to help achieve that gender balance. Introducing financial innovations that reduce the collateral requirements, such as social impact bonds, for instance. Also facilitating access to children and child services, child care, to allow women to dedicate more time to their work and to their new set of startups and organizations that they're trying to bring to the table. Also incentivizing women to cross over to male-dominated industries as well and sectors through sharing information on the expected return in these sectors and through early exposure in the form of apprenticeships. And I wouldn't say the research says, you look at if it's a male-dominated sector, look at how they're doing. But again, I emphasize on how can you bring on your own leadership style as a woman or man, and how can you bring on in the community-based feminine leadership that we have to make it in a man's world and add something more. It's about creating space for yourself rather than competing within the same space. Finally, governments and quasi-government organizations have to work together to advance the gender equality. And that how it's very important because it is smart economics, it is sound business practice, and it is essential for development. Okay, there There are three areas that we can work together as think tanks, government organizations, and quasi-government organizations, public sector, private sector, and the civil society, in designing programs that will target multiple obstacles and that will improve the performance of women entrepreneurs, which includes training programs that apply lessons from psychology and leadership studies to encourage women to act with an entrepreneurial mindset and take risk. Securing savings as well, saving mechanisms that provide a layer of privacy and security in the management of their funds, and large grants as part of business plan competitions to address capital constraints of growth-oriented firms. Also supporting policymakers in their efforts to improve the business enabling environment and in private sector development support as well. We also have to recognize that the results of these efforts will be limited if they are gender neutral and are not informed by evidence on what works to support women entrepreneurs to profitably run and grow their businesses. And also policy dialogues, very important, grassroots policy dialogues and program designs, and that should be integrated with various governments across the region, leveraging on the strength of the collective that Africa has and the potential that it can become, and unlocking the potential of women and women's businesses to become a major driver of economic growth and poverty reduction. With that, I conclude my talk, and I thank again Berkeley Investment and also all of you for being here and attending this talk. Have a great day.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a lovely thoughts you have shared.